Good evening, this is Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. The focus this evening will be about AmBank's settlement with the Ministry of Finance of Malaysia representing the government over the 1MDB transaction. Based on a statement given by AmBank late last week, the global settlement was reached with the Ministry of Finance, and this is in relation to the 1MDB and its related entities. And AmBank has decided to agree to a sum of 2.83 billion ringgit to be paid towards the full and final settlement in relation to all of these historical matters. It is worth noting that some of the leadership at AmBank are indeed new, including that of Datuk Sulaiman Muhammad Tahir, who was recruited after the 1MDB story, and the story of whether AmBank has enough to buffer the earnings for this year is currently addressed. Based on the same statement, they say that the core equity tier 1 and total capital ratio is estimated to be 13.52 to 11.01 for the SETI and 16.39% to 13.88 for the TCR, or total capital ratio. They say that they are well capitalized. They say that this will take an impact on their earnings for this year. But that's for AmBank. Let's talk about Malaysia for now. Malaysia is going to be dealing with 1MDB for the next few years, and with AmBank reaching this global settlement of 2.83 billion ringgit is a story that must be commended. But is this enough? And to talk about this and more, we have with us Pankaj. Pankaj is, of course, a very senior person in the Malaysian business scene. Pankaj was the previous Director of Investment and Corporate Strategy of KSK Group. He was CIO of Kurnia Insurance and Head of Research at OSK Research. He's now freelancing and a columnist for a bunch of newspapers in Malaysia, and of course a commentator in the Malaysian scene. Pankaj, welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks, Ibrahim.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about some of the items that arose from this particular transaction. You've raised a lot of questions regarding the transaction, but there are a lot of issues on governance per se moving forward, right? But let's talk about the transactions first. What are your thoughts about this transaction? Do you think that this is a good thing for Malaysia? Do you think that this is a way for not just Malaysians to move forward, but AmBank itself to move forward?
Well, first of all, I think looking at the announcement itself, it came as a surprise. Yeah, really. I think not many people saw this coming at all in the first place. I mean, we know that AmBank was slapped with about 53 million ringgit fine earlier, because of the lapses that they had. But now we suddenly see this over the weekend announcement that, AmBank has been slapped with a 2.83 billion ringgit fine for its involvement in 1MDB. And I think over the weekend, the weekly magazine of The Age actually clarified that some of this is, of course, related to the initial issuance of the Terengganu Investment Authority, where AmBank was involved in raising about 5 billion ringgit to a long-dated bond program. Yeah, and there was some way in terms of how this transaction was carried out in a hasty manner and in a manner that was deemed to be not an efficient manner. Yeah, in terms of pricing and in terms of how it was structured and all that. So I was surprised, actually. First of all, it was the Ministry of Finance that actually, is finding the fault on AmBank, and AmBank is paying the fine to them rather than SC. But I'm sure FC has been involved in terms of the investigation and arriving to the figure. But what surprised me, if you look at the whole picture, is the level of transparency coming from AmBank itself. Yeah. I mean, I like to compare this with what Goldman Sachs has actually gone through. Yeah, we all know Goldman Sachs too were involved in 1MDB in the issuance of the dollar debt papers of 1MDB, and of course the mispricing and all that. Everybody knew about it. Yeah, how much was involved. We took them to court. Yeah, and even Goldman Sachs was, for all said and done, they were rather transparent. Yeah, in terms of disclosure. Telling the market what is the expected hit. They took provisions before that, but in AmBank's case there was none. Yeah, we didn't see AmBank providing any guidance whatsoever. Yeah, that there was such possibility that they would be punished with this massive fine. Yeah, I mean 2.83 billion is a lot of money. It's equivalent to 2 years of AmBank's profits. Yeah, and of course, in terms of its impact on shareholders' funds, it's equivalent to about 15%, and that translates to about 94 cents per share. You know, so it's big. So there was no transparency in terms of disclosure. There was no warning to the market. There was no guidance given. In fact, I'm sure this matter has been in investigation for a while. And my question is, were the auditors aware? Yeah, whether there was something like this coming? Yeah, so issue of governance to me is important, and I think AmBank should have been more open and transparent in terms of its disclosure.
Some of the questions that you raised include the board of directors, whether or not they were aware of the offence, and the questions also involve whether AmBank is under investigation or was under investigation, but because of this global settlement being announced and therefore paid, assuming that it's going to be paid very soon, will they no longer be charged in court, either the officers of the bank or the bank itself per se, or the individuals connected to the bank? Some of these questions you are asking, and I don't think we're going to get any answer anytime soon.
Yeah, correct.
So that opaqueness that I want to talk about right now is very frustrating, considering that Malaysia has just gone through a very horrendous epidemic. On top of that, a very troubling financial scandal, the biggest the world has ever seen in recent years. There seems to be no answer in addressing the opaqueness of the situation. What's your comment on this?
Yeah, I think, first of all, if you look back into what we have gone through as far as 1MDB is concerned, especially after the elections, when 1MDB issue was really blown up, by then Pakatan Harapan, in terms of the opaqueness, in terms of all the shenanigans, and in terms of all the nonsense that was going on, which was all previously denied. But now we see the true picture in terms of how things were done. And of course, when you look at governance, you realize that everything was done in a manner that was not in line with corporate governance. From the way the board was structured, from the way it met, from the way the articles of associations were written, everything was opaque, to the extent that it was sort of made out, to actually help the powers that be to siphon money out. So it was a very eye-opener to me in terms of how governance standards were completely thrown out of the window, in terms of how it should be. Especially, I mean, even today, we are already seeing some resemblance of this continuing, where we continue to appoint political appointed people into GLCs, GLICs, all that again brings question in terms of governance, because you can say whatever you want in terms of that, whether the person is qualified to lead that GLC or GLIC, but the fact that when you put a politician there to manage the GLC, it brings to question mark. As you know, one of the things when you talk about politically exposed person, when you're dealing with that, that again is a red flag for a lot of banking institutions and all that. So I think we need to really restructure in terms of how we manage our GLCs and GLICs, in terms of putting the right people at the right places and not politically connected. To me, the days of politicians running businesses of the government and all that, I think we should move on. We cannot continue this failed structure that we had done before, and we continue to do so. So I think we should move forward and instill strong governance standards in our institutions.
All right, we'll go for a short break. When we come back, we'll talk more about the 1MDB issue, particularly on what Tony Phua, the MP for Petaling Jaya, has raised. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. I have with me Pankaj Kumar. We're talking about the 1MDB story. This time round it's about AmBank reaching a global settlement of 2.83 billion with the Ministry of Finance. Earlier today, the MP for Petaling Jaya Utara, Tony Pua, has raised some issues regarding the transaction. One of them is, of course, not just talking about AmBank, but all the transactions surrounding 1MDB as well, including 1MDB auditors, KPMG and Deloitte. The question that Tony was raising here is whether or not KPMG and Deloitte will also be faced with either settlements or court action. Pankaj, what do you think of this comment by Tony Pua?
I think it's a very pertinent question, yeah, because we are not just talking about AmBank being involved in this issue, not only just the bank, even the board, even the key senior management who were involved at that point in time, yeah, and of course the auditors, yeah, the job of an auditor. I mean, this is a material amount, yeah, it's not some small change in the pocket, yeah, it's a material amount, and obviously the auditors ought to be responsible in terms of how they did not see, this transaction or this issue that AmBank is involved in.
One of the important things to note is the Malaysian Institute of Accountants Investigation Committee have concluded wrongdoings by both accounting firms in 2018. MIA Investigation Committee have brought their case to be heard before the Disciplinary Committee of the MIA. The hearings are currently ongoing. And that's the point of having a fraternity like the MIA or any other fraternity associated like this. It is to ensure that the professional body is held to a particular higher standard. We've been told about this again and again, that professional bodies like an accounting body is actually crucial in safeguarding the integrity of such professions. My question to you, Pankaj, is that do you think that this kind of action is needed across the board more? And also, what do you think is going to come out of this? Do you think that the scarring left by the 1MDB saga has permanently defaced the quality or the level of integrity of the accounting body and the assurance bodies of Malaysia?
Very good question and a big issue. I think as far as the auditors are concerned, yes, I think the auditing profession continues to sharpen its skills in the way how it does an audit, and to ensure that corporates are well covered in terms of how an audit is done for corporates and all that. And yes, of course, we have also seen MIA taking action on auditing firms who have failed, to conduct a proper audit in that manner. But I would like to bring back to the other issue that I wanted to perhaps reshare with you, how we could change the way things are done. For example, one of the things that we talk about is about independence, And when you talk about independence, for example, auditors are appointed by the company themselves. So auditors to a certain extent are obliged to carry out an audit that is satisfactory to the customer, to the company itself. So the issue here is about how an auditor is appointed to a corporate, to a company. To me, I think if we can have a system where the auditors are not appointed by the company, like for example through a pool of resources in terms of who are the auditors and all that, and they are actually paid from this pool of money. They are not paid by the company. The company actually, all companies actually perhaps contribute to this pool, as an audit pool for all companies that are audited, and auditors are chosen from this pool. So in that way, we take away the responsibility or the relationship, between auditor and client, and the auditor can be more independent, because we see time and again, I mean, over the last from the time of Enron to WorldCom, we have seen how auditors have been faltered, because they fail. They fail because to a certain extent, they did not see it, to a certain extent, they've been auditing the companies for far too long, or at the same time, their relationship has been compromised, between the auditor and the company. So I think it's good if we move forward in terms of how auditors are actually picked, or chosen to audit a particular company. where the independence can be more thoroughly checked and as well as carried out when it comes to auditing.
One of the things that you raised, of course, is the issue of material disclosure, not just by the auditors, but by the companies themselves or related parties involved in such transactions. I know we started the interview by you talking about the level of disclosure by AmBank, which is none when it comes to transactions reaching this 2.83 global settlement.
Yeah.
But do you feel that when a company do not feel that they are obligated to disclose, they will not disclose because there is no compulsion by the authorities on them to do so? Therefore, do you feel that regulatory bodies in Malaysia like the SC or Bursa or whoever, like MOF, do you feel that they have to tighten the screws when it comes to disclosure and material disclosure for that matter, not only on imposing these kind of disclosures on the companies, but to execute punitive measures if they fail to do so? Because it's not just about having the law, it's about trying to make sure that people comply to the law. Or do you feel that that's already happening for the majority of the companies, but not MOF-related companies like 1MDB?
Very good question. And I think going back to rules and regulations and guidelines and law, our legislations, I think as far as SC or Bursa is concerned, they have done an excellent job, in terms of making sure that corporates, especially listed ones, comply with the regulatory requirement, with the listing requirement, abide by the law, and if any wrongdoings, as you have seen, SC do take actions on corporates. And your issue about material disclosure, and I can tell you for sure, 2.83 billion is definitely a material information. Cannot run away from it. You cannot say that you knew about it and you didn't disclose. Obviously, this figure is too big to ignore. And to me, I think if AmBank knew that this was coming and they did not disclose prior to this actual announcement by the Ministry of Finance that AmBank has been fined, I think they have failed to provide that disclosure requirement. But going back to that question, in terms of other corporates, and I think most corporates, I would say probably 99%, are very well aware of in terms of what they need to disclose in time and what they don't need to disclose, because the rules and regulations are clearly spelled out in terms of what is material, what is not material. So in that sense, I'm not too worried. I think maybe it's only about this AmBank's case where this disclosure was clearly not made at the right point in time. So then the question is, you ask yourself, when did this 2.83 billion really was made aware to the company or to AmBank or to the board itself? It seems like it was a fine that was announced by MOF without serious discussion with the board. And as you know, if you compare with the cases of, for example, Goldman Sachs, at least we knew there was a court case. There was some sort of plea bargaining. There was some sort of discussion in terms of settlement. But here we only see a settlement figure. There was no telling whether there was any, whether the company is brought to justice or whether they are brought to court or whether the board is deliberating the matter. So all of that was absent.
Do you feel that we, as a rakyat, has the right to know these kind of backroom dealings, or do you feel that this is a claim that it's nice to know and therefore there is no obligation to tell the rakyat about the story?
Well, I wouldn't want to go there. So I'm not sure where does that fit in, really. So I feel that I'm looking at the facts of the matter. So to me, seeing such a huge amount, I think a disclosure requirement would have demanded the bank to actually disclose it in their regular announcements to the public and to Bursa.
All right, we'll go for one more break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the investor confidence arising from this matter moving forward. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. Thanks for staying on with us. I have with me Pankaj Kumar. Let's talk a little bit more about the story of Malaysia per se. Malaysia is under emergency. We've heard the Prime Minister's 1 year anniversary announcement earlier this evening. And we have also seen some suspension of democratic matters when it comes to parliamentary seating. And just yesterday, we saw 2 or 3 MPs jumping from one political party to join the establishment. It seems like business and politics is still a work in progress. Do you feel that this has some sort of an impact towards investors, both domestic investors as well as foreign investors, in trying to put their money in the country for investments?
Well, as you know, market is a function of everything, yeah. Whether it's corporate announcements, or whether the political scene, or whether whatever else is going on in the country, yeah. And of course, sentiment is also driven by what happens outside Malaysia in terms of global market dynamics, yeah. So Malaysia is, of course, over the past year or so, we have gone through a lot of challenges, not only due to pandemic. But of course, the political drama that we have seen time and again. And I think this political drama continues to play out, yeah, until and unless we reach a stage where we call for fresh elections, GE15. And I think the Prime Minister has rightly pointed out that elections will be called once the pandemic is under control and we are able to, control the movement of people and hold elections. So I suppose that that would be the time where market will be again tested in terms of direction. Having said that, I think the political scenario has definitely changed, yeah, in terms of Malaysia. The era of one-party rule definitely is over. We are in a time where coalition parties are the one that decides where Malaysia goes, and I think Malaysia needs to regain back that confidence from the market and from investors. And I think this issue about elected MPs or aduns jumping from one party to another, from opposition to the government, I think is not a very good thing. Seriously, we need to get our act together and have anti-hopping law, yeah, to disregard any members of parliament or members of state assemblies from jumping, yeah, from one party to another. I think that really defeats the purpose of having elections in the first place, yeah. And I think a lot of people have been put off with this drama about politicians jumping around, yeah. I think we need to have some certainty and some stability in terms of governance, in terms of our political scenario. And if that is more stable, we will see investors returning to Malaysia, yeah, both portfolio investors or even in terms of foreign direct investments, yeah.
Thank you very much. That was Pankaj Kumar, previously the Director of Investment and Corporate Strategy at KSK Group. Pankaj, thanks for taking time to spend with us. We'll end this episode for now, but if you've missed any part of this show, just head on to Astro AWANI, look for Notepad over there. You can also watch these kind of shows on your mobile devices. Just download the Astro AWANI app, wherever you get the application. Until then, thanks very much for watching and goodbye.
Thank you, Brian.